Elliot, we'll tag you in here. We'll let Elliot play.
Thank you.
Elliot, you want to
Wow.
hang out? Yes.
Thank you.
This is Elliot Rear and Jason.
Thanks.
Hi, Elliot.
Hi. How you doing? All right. I'm Bengals fans here. We're in Cincinnati, having a tough go at it. I feel like every day we wake up and we hear Joe Burrow's unhappy. Joe Burrow's frustrated. It's the end. Joe Burrow's going to request a trade like Carson did. Do you think this season is going to be the boiling point? Is this going to be it for Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals? That relationship, is it the end? Can it be repaired?
Two things can be true at once. I think Joe Burrow is rightfully frustrated because, frankly, Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. We all know that. I think that this year, the Cincinnati Bengals have been the biggest abject disaster in all of sports. I don't think any team has failed their fan base more than the Cincinnati Bengals this year. That includes the Jets. If it weren't for the Jets, we'd be talking way more about the absolute fail. And I think when you have a quarterback like they have, and you fail that quarterback in his prime, you have to acknowledge you have failed at the highest possible level. You have let your fans down. You've let your organization down. All of these things are true. I do not think that Joe Burrow is then going to turn around and demand a trade. What Joe Burrow is going to do is he's going to do what any winning quarterback is going to do. He's going to walk into the owner's group and he's going to say, what the hell are we doing and why is it this way? And he's going to ask for answers and he's going to make a loud noise. That's what great quarterbacks do. Great quarterbacks turn around and say, this is not acceptable. That being said, that's going to lead to, I do believe, change particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And let's see if there's coaching changes all the way up to the top. Maybe there should be. Ultimately, he should be demanding change. That change isn't going to a new organization. That just is so rare to happen in the NFL. Franchise quarterbacks are franchise quarterbacks for a reason. I think Joe Burrow is going to play the majority of his career at Cincinnati. You never know how careers end, but he's going to play the meat of his career at Cincinnati. They're going to figure this out. He's too good not to have it happen, but he's frustrated, and he should be because it's the biggest disaster in sports this year.
You talk about forcing change, and usually Joe Burrow's kind of reserved in these press conferences. Well, lately he's been dropping things like, we're going to try to do everything we can to bring T. Higgins back. T. Higgins just switched agents. He's now with Jamar Chase's agent. This is a guy that many Bengals fans believe it won't be here next season. Bengals are going to be unwilling to pay whatever that price tag is. My question to you is, what do you think that price tag is? I have at least the belief right now that because of the injury history, he's again struggled with that hammy all year long. He's struggled with injuries in the past. It's the soft tissue stuff. Do you think teams are going to give him that $30 million contract next season?
Yes. And you're right that should teams? Nah, probably not. Yeah. But is free agency for a reason? Everybody overspends the first day of free agency. Yeah. And if you are a team that doesn't have a number one, T. Higgins is your easy answer for it. The other side of it, too, and I hear Joe Burrow, my God, go pay T. Higgins, of course, because he wants his world to continue to be as easy as possible to be great at what he does. I respect the hell out of that. I also think we have to acknowledge that it is easier than ever to find wide receivers in the draft. I'm not saying that's a fail-proof system, but if I'm the Bengals, I can look at it and say, man, I don't know, shouldn't we just focus on going out and getting a guy that can help us? There's so many wide receivers that come out every year. I feel like every year I cover the draft, we're sitting here saying, this is the best wide receiver class we've ever seen. I realize this year's draft looks a little weak, but you also have to look at overall your business plan. They look at things in 2-year windows. So if the Bengals are scouting the position for the next 2 years, do they look at the wide receiver class 2 years from now saying, hey, that's good enough, let's take a little step back to take a big step forward, not invest money? That's real for how teams analyze talent. I think it makes a lot of sense to let T. Higgins walk as much as nobody wants to let T. Higgins walk. I don't think it makes a ton of sense to pay him top market money. I do think that he will end up somewhere on top market money. I will say this, too. Although it makes no financial sense, I would have no problem franchising it one more time, even though that's just the beast of the burden, and then try and find another wide receiver down the road. So I think that T's going to be a number one somewhere. You're right, the injury history should drive down the value, but teams don't spend smart on the first day of free agency.
Final Bengals question for you, for me. Zach Taylor is a guy that's taken a lot of heat in this city. I tend to believe Zach Taylor was the benefactor of landing Joe Burrow, but then again, any good coach has had good quarterbacks with him. That's kind of what makes them a great coach as well. You need the talent, you need the coach. Where do you rank Zach Taylor in terms of all coaches in the NFL? Is he the upper tier? Is he the lower tier? Is he the middle tier?
He's the middle tier. And he's not the lower tier because we have to look at the excellence of Joe Burrow. Like, franchises ruin quarterbacks all the
Yeah.
time. The Bengals have not done that. So I give a lot of credit to the development on the offensive side of the ball. But part of what a coach should always be judged by is how do they mask their deficiencies. So if you were an offensive minded coach, how capable are you of finding the best defensive minds to help you? And that's real part of this. Lou Anarumo is somebody that a couple of years ago we all thought was going to be a head coach, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
now all of a sudden
Yeah.
that defense is a disaster. That defense is a disaster from a personnel standpoint. That defense is a disaster from a coaching standpoint. There is nothing I look at and say, there is your saving grace for the defensive side of the football. They have to look at that whole process. Even though they've got a couple of talented players, they got to look at the whole thing and figure out how do you rework what we do on the defensive side of the ball. That falls on coach, right? So at some point, like I had our Yahoo NFL insider, Charles Robinson, pointed out, the reason the Bears are absolutely sold on Mike Vrabel to be their next head coach, according to his reporting, is because they believe that when you are Mike Vrabel, when you're sort of a rah-rah coach, when you're, a culture coach, you better be able to pick a great offensive coordinator and great defensive coordinator. The fact that Vrabel, as a defensive-minded rah-rah coach, managed to find Arthur Smith and Matt LaFleur as offensive coordinators is a feather in his cap. I will say the same thing. When you look at the coaching system for the Bengals, you better be able to identify a defensive coordinator because the guy's not in the room. And I don't know, the fact that you've held on to Anarumo as long as you have, you're either blindly loyal or you know something that the rest of us don't know. Either way is ownership. I want to know how it got that bad on that side of that ball because that is absolutely part of a head coach's responsibility. So as a result, because he didn't mask his deficiencies well, he's a middle-of-the-road coach.
I think a lot of Bengals fans are kind of holding their breath, hoping for drastic changes this offseason, which is not something we've seen from this organization really at any point in time in its history. You have a lot of guys making big money next year, Sam Hubbard at $9 million, Alex Kappa at $7 million, that are obvious cut candidates. You have a lot of needs on defense, coaching staff changes people are asking for. How much, if any, of these moves outside of the Bengals' norms do you expect them to actually make this year and commit to the Joe Burrow window more than they've ever committed to a window before?
I think they'll have to go all in. There's a ton of public pressure to do that. I do think this. I had somebody, I've always said this as a Raiders fan, my team stinks. And I look around and say, okay, ask yourself realistically, how many new starters do you need? How many guys on your team would be starting on a playoff caliber team, right? Kenner's heard me say this before. So, look at it and say, okay, in a dream world, if you're a Bengals fan and you're saying, God, we need, 8 new starters on the defensive side of the ball, 3 new on the offense. All right, so if you're looking at 11 or 12 starters, a Hall of Fame offseason, an absolute, oh my God, I cannot believe we did that offseason, will get you 4 or 5 new high-level starters at best. That's free agency and the draft combined. If you get 4 or 5 high-level impact guys out of an offseason, then you are talking about an all-time offseason. So if it looks like you need 12 new guys, talking about at least a 2-year rebuild. And that's just the logic side of all of this that nobody wants to hear. So I think you have to go all in. You have to cut some of these salaries. You have to accept who you are. And that's the hardest thing for every fan base to do. Accept who you are. Right now, the Bengals are a team that have a couple of really talented pieces and a bunch of bad. So if you're going to fix a bunch of bad, I think it's a 2-year offseason plan that gets you to where you want to be then. And that's a tough mountain to climb because it wasn't that long ago that we all thought the Bengals were going to take down the Chiefs and Mahomes. Yeah. Now it looks like, to me, it's 2 off seasons to get back to even competitive with them. And that, to get competitive with the Bills and where they are, that's just – it's a large ask for Bengals fans. I would preach to you that whatever you think the solution is, if you think you need more than 5 or 6 new guys that are coming in day 1 next year and starting, then you need more than 1 offseason to do it.
One day Cincinnati fans will see happiness. One day we'll experience it. I don't know if it'll be soon. But Jason, I have 2 last questions, non-Bengals related. I always try to end these interviews with some sort of silly nonsense. But this isn't nonsense. You're a very serious fiddle player. Now, I have a question for you. When you learn to play the fiddle, obviously guitar, they've got, they've got Smoke on the Water. You try to get to Freebird at the end when you master the guitar. What is the song you master when you learn how to play the fiddle? Is it Devil Went Down to Georgia? Is that the number one?
Devil Went Down to Georgia. Look, I grew up a classical violinist as a kid, and then I transitioned over to fiddle. So the funny thing is, but I can give you the answer to this. For me, I got into Juilliard when I was a little kid. I was a little classical violinist, right? So when I started learning fiddle stuff, what I did is I ripped apart guitar solos from 70s rock records that I loved and tried to figure out how to comp the guitar parts on a violin. So like the first thing I learned to play that wasn't classical music was Hotel California. It was like, how do I do that? And then I went through 80s rock solos and like all that stuff. But part of the reason I did it that way is because I looked around and I said, man, there are 1,000 12-year-old kids at that point that can play Orange Blossom Special better than I ever will. Though that's the like Orange Blossom Special is a fiddle tune that every kid learns to play, and it's not like Charlie Daniels, R.I.P., great human being, was a dear friend and absolutely incredible. Charlie is was an incredible fiddle icon. But Devil Went Down to Georgia is just a trashy song. Like any kid, I can teach you how to play Devil Went Down to Georgia. It is so simple. And by the way, Johnny lost. Like the Devil solo is way cooler than Johnny all day long.
People do forget that.
The song is a lie. The song, and Charlie, R.I.P., I love you, buddy. Song is a lie. And Charlie, by the way, would have always, like, Charlie admitted to everybody that ever knew him that he was a better guitar player than fiddle player. I love Charlie, the human being, but, like, the Devil Went Down to Georgia ain't it. Orange Blossom Special, you go out to, like, some random, we're having a fiddle contest in, wherever, Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. Like, it's going to be Orange Blossom Special.
All right, final question. Rank these songs. If I Die Young, Postcard from Paris, and Better Dig 2. If you had to rank them, 1 through 3.
Okay, Postcard's 3 because I didn't have a fiddle solo in it, so that song sucked. But I did always like that song. That's the funny thing is everybody thinks If I Die Young. It's a beautiful song, and I was honored to get to play it every night on stage. But If I Die Young, to me, as beautiful as much impact as it made, was never as much fun. Better Dig 2 was just like, we opened for a year and a half on tour. We opened every night with these drums in front of all of our risers. Like I busted one of my knuckles open on a drum on the first like slam down. Like you got anger and aggression out playing the drums before I got to go out and play like a really cool fiddle solo. So I would rank Better Dig 2 above that. Also, Sneaky Done. Done was the most fun I ever had playing a fiddle solo was Done. And we did that on the ACM Awards, the Academy of Country Music Awards, and we all got in a line. And I remember we worked on this for a month. We all walked out on the middle of the stage, got in a straight line, and we jumped up and down. So I had to jump up and down while I played the toughest fiddle solo I've ever been a part of in my life. And we watched it back that night, and we were like, holy cow, that's so good. And I'll never forget, Kimberly looked at me afterwards, and she's like, we're going to open every show that way from now on. We're going to go out, and we're going to do the fiddle solo that way. And I was like, KP, like, it is a wildly hard solo to play standing just by myself. You want me to jump up and down? And we did for the rest of my time touring. Every time we ever played Done, we all walked in a line and we jumped up and down while I played the fiddle solo. And some nights I'd listen to the recordings of the shows afterwards, and I'd be like, yeah, I did that jumping up and down. Some nights I'd be like, what do you expect? I'm jumping up and down. It's hard to do.
All right, well, good stuff. Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports. Jason, beyond, appreciate your time today. Thank you. With the college football playoffs coming up this weekend, you'll be covering that along with a lot of other things going on in the world of sports. But where can people find your content?
Yeah, just find me on social media at Jason Fitz, F-I-T-Z, and then Yahoo Sports. We've got a couple of shows inside coverage where we cover the NFL every Wednesday, Friday, and then Sunday night we recap every game. And then the College Football Power Hour is every Tuesday and Saturday, and we'll be there through all the college football playoffs. So really proud of what we're doing at Yahoo Sports. Check out the app.
All right, Jason, appreciate you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.